أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to our last chapter, which is chapter 15 on the human resources and payroll cycle. Now let's start looking at the overall activity of this cycle, and that is human resources management and payroll cycle includes a set of activities that manage the workforce. And so there are two parts to management or managing the workforce. The first one is the human resources, which includes some activities, and then the payroll, which includes paying the employees. Okay, and we're going to talk about the human resources first, and then we'll start talking about the payroll, and then finish next week, inshallah. The tasks in the human resources start with recruitment and hiring. Recruitment is are the activities that take place prior to hiring the employee. So advertising for the positions, going and looking for potential candidates at universities. You have seen, I'm sure, that employers come at our college and they give information out and they take your CVs, etc. So this is called the recruitment event. And then following that, there may be interviews. And then when the employee signs the contract, this is when the employee is hired. And then once the employee is hired, the employee goes through training for a period of time. And the human resources department, along with the department the employee is going to work at, participates in the training of the employee. Once the employee is trained, and the training, on-the-job training is something that is ongoing, but the initial training, once the initial training orientation is finished, the employee is assigned with a job. So the employee is either assigned to a particular position or assigned to a particular project with a group, etc. And then they start to work. After the employee works for a few months, the employee has an initial evaluation. So usually in every country, every company, there is a probation period. The probation period is when the company looks at whether the employee is capable of performing the job that they are hired to perform. And if they are, then the employee is given an evaluation and the job becomes permanent. But that doesn't end the evaluation of performance. Usually in all good companies, the evaluation happens at least once a year, where the employee is told the things that they're doing well and the things that they need to improve upon, and the employee can then work towards the goals that are set for improvement. So this is, again, the human resources is involved here, but the department where the employee works also is involved in this process. The fifth activity or the fifth task is discharging the employee. Discharging means the employee leaves the company, and this could be the employee resigns and joins another company, or the employee retires from the company, or the employer fires or lets the employee go, maybe a layoff situation. So in this case, the employee leaves the company, and all of this is considered as discharge, right? Leaving the company. And human resources department is involved in this. And then we have compensation, paying the employee. The pay is salary and benefits. So salary is the cash compensation that the employee is paid, and the benefits are additional benefits or additional facilities that the employees are given. For example, the employee could be offered housing or health insurance or travel allowance. All of those things are considered benefits. So compensation includes both. And this is the activity that is done in the payroll. The payroll calculates, and we're going to go through the steps the payroll goes through to compensate the employee. And the seventh task is to allocate cost to products and departments. So the labor cost is assigned to different products because the direct labor and indirect labor, as we studied in the production cycle, this information comes from the payroll, human resources and payroll department. And it also, the cost is assigned to products as well as departments. So the employees could be working for different departments: accounting, marketing, production, finance, etc. So the cost of the labor is allocated to the different departments. All right. Uh, you can ask me questions anytime. I will continue, inshallah, because most of this is uh, easy to understand, inshallah, common sense type information. The payroll must be designed to serve two groups of people. One is the management, whatever the management of the company needs, whatever the management of the company needs in terms of reports and in terms of calculations, the payroll must serve them. And then also the payroll must follow the government regulations. So, in different countries, there are certain laws the government imposes. For example, in the US, there is a minimum wage. Somebody works for a company for an hour, there is a minimum wage that has to be paid, and the company cannot pay anything less than that. Also, there is a rule that if the employee works for 40 hours, then anything after that is considered overtime, and the payment should be time and a half of the regular pay. So if the employee makes $10 per hour, after the 40th hour, the 41st hour, the hour number 41, the employee must be $15, 1.5 times the regular hourly wage. So these are government regulations that must be followed when the payroll is calculating the compensation. If the payroll is incomplete or erroneous, if there is incorrect information or incomplete information, then it impairs decision making. It will make the direct, indirect labor inaccurate, which would make the inventory inaccurate, which would make the cost of goods sold inaccurate, which would make the gross profit and net income inaccurate. So this, when the management makes decisions based on those numbers, their decisions are going to be faulty because the numbers are incorrect. It could also result in fines. So if the employee is supposed to be paid overtime and the employee is not paid overtime and the employee complains, then the government could fine the employee as well. So these are serious things, and people are really sensitive when it comes to their compensation. Everybody looks at their payment very, very carefully to make sure that they're getting paid what they're supposed to get paid. So it damages employee morale if the payment is not calculated correctly. And we're going to talk about what employee morale actually means in just a couple of minutes, inshallah. Okay, so far so good. You're following? Now, the average turnover cost is 1.5 times the annual salary. What does turnover mean? Turnover means that you continuously have new employees coming and only old employees leaving the organization. Now, you know that whenever a new employee comes, it takes a while for that employee to settle, and the company also has to adjust with the employee style and so forth. Just like when you have a brand new professor joining the university the first semester and you're taking a class, it's not the same as somebody who has been here for a while, and you know from other students the style of the professor, and the professor knows the aptitude of the students and the difficulties the students are facing, etc. So when this is known, the operation is much smoother than when somebody new comes. And if continuously new people are joining the company and old people are leaving, that is called high turnover, and it's usually not good for the company, right? It causes the company to slow down in production, and it costs them more. So the company should manage turnover to reduce cost and maintain qualified staff. If they have qualified people, should be kept happy. They should be satisfied with the company so that they can stay. Are you following? So what can the employer do to keep the morale high? What is morale? Morale is the feeling of goodness of your about your company. You feel well working for the company. You feel that the company is a good place to work. The organization takes care of its people. They take care of their customers. You feel well. If you don't feel well, it leads to high turnover. And uh, no matter how much salary an employee is paid, the people get used to the compensation. The compensation uh, initially motivates people to join, but it cannot keep them motivated unless they feel well about working. So the employee must feel well about working for an organization. And how does that happen? We'll talk about it in the next slide. If the employee has bad morale, then it affects customer interactions and it affects profitability. So if you have some employee working for a company and they feel that the company is cheating the customers, or the company is not taking care of its employees, etc., when they handle customers, this attitude will show up and it will harm the customer relationships and it will harm the profitability of the company. Does that make sense? Right? If somebody is working for a company because they don't have any other choice, they're just there because they have to be there, you will notice it. You will see that they have no interest in doing what they're supposed to do. Right? So what increases the morale? What boosts the morale of employees? Number one, the employees must believe that they have the opportunity to do what they do best. So now if you are working at a position where your skills are employed, then you will feel better about that job. I met an individual once at a car repair shop, a big company. He was doing the job of a cashier, and as I was making payment for the service, he told me that he was an accountant. He had a degree in accounting, and he was hired as an accountant, and he is paid the salary of an accountant. So he didn't have a complaint about the payment, but he was complaining that I have studied accounting at the university, and I am working as a cashier. So I'm not using my knowledge and my skills that I learned. Although the person was paid and title was accountant, he was paid, but he was doing the job of a cashier. So obviously his morale was not high because he was not doing what he was good at, what he was best at. Right? So this brings the morale of the employees down if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, what they're best. Second thing is the employees must believe that their opinions count. And this is very important because sometimes the employees could come with ideas that are not so bright. If they're continuously turned down, then they would stop trying. When I first started working for the CPA firm that I worked for in the US back in 1999, the previous century, I would be coming up with ideas, daily. All these ideas would come to me, and I would go down to my boss and I would say, why don't we try this? Why don't we do this? And he would be very keen. He would listen to me very carefully, and he would say, yeah, go ahead and try. And then I would try and I would fail, and he would say, don't worry, try something else. Later I would find out that they had already tried what I tried before and it didn't work. My boss never stopped me, right? And he used to say that if you have a number of bad ideas and then you have one good idea, I want that good idea, so I don't mind trying the bad ideas even if I think they're bad. And he would never say that this is a bad idea. He would always encourage. So again, it makes you feel well, makes you feel that you are making a contribution and you're important and so forth, especially when you're young. So my boss used to say that if you turn down people's ideas, they will stop trying, and I don't want that. So this is very important. Number three is believe their co-workers are committed to quality. And I know that working in group projects, you already know that not all group members in every project makes equal amount of contributions. And this is going to be true when you go to work for any organization. The rule is 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people in most organizations. And if you are in that 20% who carries a heavy load, you might feel that, okay, I'm doing all this work and I'm getting paid the same as somebody else who's not doing as much. That may be true for a little while, but when there is a crunch, for example, in this COVID-19 environment where the employees were fired because the company did not have enough money to pay everybody, the 20% who do the work, they are staying. They have continued to stay. Even if they don't, they will find something else. So always carrying more than what your fair share is in terms of work is a good idea. Not only is it good in terms of keeping your job, but it increases your marketability, and it makes your uh, skills sharper if you do more work, right? Number 4, understand the connection between their job and the company's mission. Now, sometimes the employees could be working at something very small, and they might think that it's not important if I do it, correctly, or don't do it correctly, and do it care. It doesn't matter. It's just a lowly job. But if they understand that the connection between what they do and how people benefit from it, or how the society benefits from it, then it increases their morale. I'll give you an example. Uh, I read this article some time back where the CEO of the Southwest Airline used to go to an airport every Saturday and load luggage into the airplanes with the employees. And he used to send the message that this is a very important task, because if the passengers, the passengers reach the destination and their luggage goes to some other destination, or the luggage does not arrive, that's very inconvenient. Has it ever happened to any one of you where you reached the destination and the luggage did not come, or the luggage was late? Has it happened to any one of you? No? Every time you traveled, your luggage arrived with you? Okay. Now, if it happened to you, right? Atif says almost every time. I don't know where you're going. Every time it happens, but it's very inconvenient. So by the CEO, when he is doing that work, he is demonstrating that this is something very important. This must be done correctly, because this makes the lives of the customers, the passengers, easier. So when employees understand the importance, their morale goes up, right? It's important sometimes to explain or send the message that the work that they're doing is important. Okay, so this again, soon in the first day you walk into uh, your job, for most of you, you will have people reporting to you because you have a university degree. You will have from the first day people who will be reporting to you. At the first day I joined, there were 7 people reporting to me. I had much less knowledge of the work that they're doing than those people. They were experts in what they were doing. But the uh, reason they were reporting to me was because I had this degree, and this will be true for you as well. Taking care of employees is the hardest thing to do, because the computer acts the same way when you press the same button. Well, sometimes, but people are not. The people don't react the same way, right? People have something called mood, right? Obviously, you don't want to ask your father for money when he's angry, right? Am I right? Or am I right? You don't, right? So to understand the mood of the employees, they may be having a bad day, so you have to handle their morale, right? And this is very important. If you can handle people's emotions and their emotional needs, then you will move up the organization, because managing the people is the most difficult thing to do. Accounting is much easier than managing other people. Okay, so that's about the human resources part. Now we come into the payroll. And the rest of the discussion mostly is going to be about payroll, the rest of today and then the next week, inshallah. The payroll processing has some inputs that are entered into the system, and they're used to calculate the payroll. So these inputs come from different sources. The first source is the human resources. From the human resources, the information about hiring the employees, terminations, which is firing of the employees, and changes in pay, so salary increase, promotion, etc. This information comes from the human resources department. From the employees, the change in personal information comes. So if the employee changes the address or gets married or has children, those details come from the employees. From the various different departments where the employee works, the time tracking data comes. The time tracking includes how many hours or how many days the employees worked, how many days they were absent, how many days they were on vacation. The department where they work have this data, and it is sent to the payroll department to calculate the payroll. From the government agencies, the tax and the regulations information come. So the tax rates are set by the government, and there are some labor laws that are set by the government. For example, the minimum wage. There could be other non-payroll related regulations, right? Such as uh, there is a labor law in Qatar that says that the employees cannot be outside in the heat between 11 and 3 o'clock in the summer months. So this again, this information comes from the government, right? So any regulations uh, comes from the government. There's a question. It says, is the overtime mentioned by the department or payroll identifies it? The overtime is the time, the total number of hours the employee works. Is kept track by the department, and if it crosses the limit, the payroll department has to calculate the payment, right? So the number of hours is kept track of by the department, but the payment calculation is done by the payroll department. The payroll department calculates the payment based on the number of hours tracked by the department. Does that make sense? Okay. Then we have the benefit organizations. If the employees get employee benefits such as tuition fees for the children's schooling, this information would come from the school. If the employees are given airline tickets to go on vacation during summer or other times, then the ticket prices come from the airlines. So this information is coming from the outside organizations. So these are inputs, right? And then we have three major outputs from the payroll department. The first one is paychecks, which is payment to the employees, either cash or check or direct deposit. Number two, checks to the government and others like the school or the airlines, right? Tax to the government and other payments to the other organizations. And then the third one is payroll reports. The management could ask for different reports: overtime report, direct labor report, attendance report. All of these reports are prepared by the payroll department based on the input received from the sources that we looked at in the previous slide, right? These are the major outputs from the payroll department. Okay, does it make sense? Now, the actual steps of calculating the payroll are as follows. The first step is updating the master file. Every employee has a master file which has, if you remember, permanent data that do not change on a regular basis, right? That's master file. And there may be some information that change, but not on a regular basis. So if there is any update, the master file is updated first. So if the employee's salary increased or the employee was promoted, this is updated in the master file. That's step number one. Step number two, if there is any change in the tax rates or deductions. The word deductions here means that some portion of the employee's salary could be taken out for a particular purpose. For example, There may be a retirement plan where the employee puts some of his or her monthly salary, and it will be saved, and the employee can take that when they retire. So it's called a retirement plan deduction. So let's say the employee is making 10,000 riyals. The employee could say that put 1,000 in the retirement fund and give me 9,000. So 1,000 would be deducted, and the employee could change that option anytime, right? Increase or decrease that. So this is called an example deductions. So updating of the tax rates and deductions is the next step. Third step is to validate time and attendance data. So the time is kept by the department and the attendance is by the department, and it's reviewed and validated, meaning made sure that this is accurate before the payroll is calculated. Sometimes the employees could be asked if the information is correct or not. And then number 4 is the preparation of payroll, the actual calculation of the payment, the salary to the employee. And number 5 is disbursement of that payroll. Paying disbursement is disburse payroll means pay the employees their salaries that was calculated in step 4. Step 6 is almost simultaneously done with step 4, although it's listed as number 6, but calculation of employer paid benefits and taxes. So benefits that are paid, right, maybe the tuition fees of the children or the airline tickets, etc., all of those are calculated almost simultaneously, and the taxes as well if there is tax. Now in Qatar, alhamdulillah, we don't have individual income tax, but in other countries in Europe, United States, Australia, they have, and those are calculated. Number 7 is disbursement of the payroll taxes and other deductions. Again, this is simultaneous almost with number 5, right? Disbursement of payroll taxes and other deductions to different funds. So these are the 7 steps in the payroll cycle that happen one after the other, right? Are there any questions about this? Are you following? I know it's a little bit involved, but do you understand? Are you there? Is anyone awake? Okay, very good. Sorry to wake you up. All right. Now we have this last slide for today, which is the use of IT to enhance the activities in the payroll cycle. The first is collection and validation of time and attendance data. Enhancement can be done using electronic time clocks and badge readers. You know, when employee comes into the to work in the morning, they could scan their card. In some companies, you might have seen there is a fingerprinting machine. They put their finger and they are clocked in, so their presence is recognized. And when they leave, they also put their finger in there, or they could swipe a card or swipe their badge, and it would clock them out, right? Register that they have left the company, left work. So based on this, automatically the time could be calculated, and the system also does edit checks to verify reasonableness. Now sometimes it could happen that, let's say for instance, a nurse comes in 6 o'clock in the morning and she punches her finger, and her shift ends at the end of the day at 6 o'clock in the evening, but she forgets to clock out. So now the system would register her as having worked 24 hours. So the system would then raise a flag and say, you know, is this accurate? Because it is not impossible if the next nurse did not come. It is possible for the nurse to stay 24 hours, but it's not normal. So the system would raise a flag and say, is this correct? Is this accurate? And you could say yes or no. So this is called edit checks to verify reasonableness. This system automatically does that, and you can approve or disapprove the transaction, right? Raising a flag whether this is correct or not. Next point is online management review and approval of time. So before the payment is made, the management could get an electronic report with the number of hours worked and the details of the work, etc., before they can approve. And this could be done very fast uh, electronically instead of using tons of paperwork for the management to sign, etc. We have a very good system in our university, the Oracle system, where most everything is electronic and online. So it makes it faster. The next is direct deposit and electronic fund transfer. So instead of paying cash or check, hard copy checks, the payment is deposited electronically into the employee's bank account. It's fast and it's efficient. Uh, Many companies do that. And then the last is calculation of benefits and taxes. The employee access to information via intranet. So we have here MyQU in there. There is My Talabati services in there. We have all the payment and benefit calculations and all the history. So if anybody needs information or needs to check the accuracy, any employee, for example, I could go and log in, and if I need to change something, if I need to add something, if I have another child, I could add. If somebody gets married, they could add. So they have access to this. It makes it much easier. And before even COVID-19, the system was very, very electronic. But even after the advent of the pandemic, it's even more. So the system is even more electronic. And many big organizations do that. It makes lives easier for the employee as well as the payroll department. Any questions on what we discussed? Everything is clear? Okay, very good. So I am intentionally doing shorter than full sessions because this is very overloaded time for most students with all the projects coming along and all the commitments that you have to fulfill. So my advice to you would be utilize the time, put in a reasonable amount of effort. You hear the word all the time. You hear the phrase people saying, do your best, do your best. What does that mean, do your best? It means leave sleeping, leave everything, and just work on homework and studying and so forth. What I would like to say is put in a reasonable amount of effort. Effort that you can put while keeping your other commitments as well, right? Put in a reasonable amount of effort and don't stress out, because GPA has no direct connection with your success in your career. You should try to keep a good GPA, but you should not be overly worried about it. A student who always had 3.9 or 4.0 GPA, all A's, 90s, actually has not learned how to deal with failure. And learning how to deal with failure, learning how to deal with ups and downs is something that is important for life. So you are not always going to have a positive and outstanding outcome in your life. And having to deal with a bad grade every now and then is something that prepares you for life, which is good, which the straight A student may never experience until they go out into the real world. I'm not discouraging you from doing well, but what I'm saying is put in your effort, and whatever the outcome is, you have to deal with the outcome. And that is also training for life, right? So put in a reasonable amount of effort, inshallah, and the outcome, inshallah, would be all right. Do you have any questions for me in regards to what we studied today or about the projects? Project B? Don't be scared to ask, because I got upset last time. Okay. Inshallah. inshallah. As you start to work, if you have any questions, try to be creative, try to have some fun with the project, right? Don't overly worry about the grade. Try to learn something, try to learn how to put together a good poster or a good video or a good presentation, right? This is life skill. This is going to serve you when you go to work, inshallah. Life is not a closed book exam, right? So if you only take closed book exams and you don't learn a new skill or new skills, then you are not getting prepared for what is to come next, right? Your success is very important to me. I want every single one of you to be successful, inshallah. Okay? All right? I will see you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.